Okay. Where do I start? New York City. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. If you so you have Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, kind of all on the line across the state. It's interesting for me to think about it this way. Granted that there's definitely variations in the size of these cities, but a lot of kind of the New York services depend on, I feel like, the distance that people are willing to drive from the cities. So Syracuse is kind of right there in the middle, along with Rochester, but each city is a couple hours apart from each other. So every time you get a little bit further, obviously there's a few more flights. So Syracuse is about what I would expect for New York City. It's been very nice. JFK is 3 daily CRJ 900s on Delta, and I think 3 daily Embraer 190s on JetBlue. I think LaGuardia is 5 daily CRJ 900s on Delta, and I think that's it. Well, you have Newark on United, which is Embraer 170s, and I think that's it. Let's see. San Francisco to Syracuse. Okay, this is very interesting to me. I don't know how this would work. I think if it was going to be a daily service, it would work best on a United Embraer 175. The problem with that is the range. I really don't think that it would make a lot of sense to operate it on an Embraer 175. So I think what they should do to start is operate it. If they're going to start this service, if United
One interesting point, though, real quick, that I would think about. Let's pull up the Denver number because this is pretty much the equivalent. Let's see what Denver is. 137 in Q4 of 2021. So maybe, possibly, you can get.
I mean, Denver went from being an Embraer 175 daily, and that got overbooked like so much they had to upgrade it to an A319, A320. So I could see them trying an A319 to start, or even if that doesn't have the range. I want to say the 319 for some reason has more range than the 320, but I could be wrong. So they could try an A319. It probably would just be a couple times a week. And then if that does well enough, they could even make it a daily A319 probably within the next 10 years. I kind of compare Syracuse to Buffalo because they're similar geographic locations. And for long routes like this, there's not really a huge difference in distance. So Buffalo is a bigger city. Obviously, their airport's probably, I think, twice the size. But they have basically the same kind of foundational services. If they don't have it yet, I don't think we'll get it for a while. But at the same time, Syracuse does have Denver on United and Buffalo somehow doesn't. So that's the kind of thing that interests me to kind of take a look at. So I could see San Francisco coming here, maybe in the next 10 years on an A319 or something, and then maybe they just build off of that. Scrolling down, let's see, Fort Myers to Syracuse. Okay, so I'm probably going to reference Frontier a couple times in my little rants here. So obviously, you guys probably know that Frontier cut a huge slew of routes a couple months back all over the United States. What was it, late July, early August, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And I know they left Albany completely, which is very unfortunate. I think they only made up 1% of the travel out of Albany, so I guess it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, you still don't like to see an airline depart an airport.
No,
so
absolutely
thankfully, they're still here at Syracuse doing year-round services to Orlando and Denver. I think 4 or 5 times a week, along with seasonal service to Raleigh-Durham. In the winter months, prior years, they had Miami, Fort Myers and Tampa out of Syracuse, which all did fairly well. So I think those are all 4 or 5 weekly as well. Those are really good services. So obviously Fort Myers being cut, 178 passengers. I feel like this could constitute something like a Breeze A220 a couple times a week. I think that would do very well. I think that would definitely fill in Frontier's gap. Another thing that came to mind is, Breeze started the Tampa service. They announced the Tampa service like right after Frontier cut Syracuse to Tampa. And I think considering that, I think if Breeze looks at Fort Myers to Syracuse and sees that there's this kind of a demand, I think Breeze definitely started Tampa because of that suspended service. So I do think that we could see Breeze starting Fort Myers at some point here in the near future. New York City, we already went there. Orlando, Florida. Okay, so
577. Damn.
It's a pretty good amount. So The most significant Orlando service at the moment, I would say, is JetBlue, which is a daily A320, which is pretty impressive. It's been pretty consistent, and I think the bookings have been really, really good for that. So that's really nice to see. Orlando Sanford on Allegiant a couple times a week, maybe 3 or 4, something like that, maybe 5. I honestly don't know, so I apologize. You have Southwest, which is a once weekly to MCO. This is surprising to me. I'm going to go off on a little rant here about Southwest services. So obviously, Southwest kind of missed out on Syracuse for a long time here. Well, they had the other upstate and Western New York cities. So having started service last year, it makes sense they don't have a ton of routes, but with Baltimore performing how it is, Baltimore, to be honest, is not doing super well in Southwest. It's a 3 daily service, except on Saturdays when they operate Orlando. Then it goes to a 2 daily for Saturday, and then they swap one of the Baltimore services with Orlando. And Orlando is about 80 or 85% on every flight. And then you have Baltimore, the 3 daily service, which is like 60% or something. So it's not very good. I think what they should do is definitely make Orlando a daily service. That would fill up a lot better. You also have better connections, or maybe not better connections, but you have that option. I think we were talking about this earlier, how the problem with Orlando is maybe the slots are a little bit more
slots and landing fees and all those logistical items that we don't know as unprofessional individuals.
I think that's really the main issue at this point. But I mean, if Rochester, Albany, Buffalo are getting, I think they all have daily service with Southwest to Orlando. I think it definitely makes sense if Syracuse gets it. So you have that. I think we could see what makes sense. I would love for Southwest to keep Baltimore on the 3 daily service, but I completely understand if they can't. It makes sense probably for them to downgrade it to a 2 daily 737-700. So I could see them doing a twice daily 700 to Baltimore, a once daily 700 or 800 probably to Orlando. Tampa, I know the Syracuse numbers for Tampa were very high. So I guess you're looking at the load factor.
No, I was just taking a look real quick. I'll go back. But yeah, I'm seeing 60 consistently, non-peak time.
Okay. So peak
even
time
50 there, yeah.
That's not too good.
Maybe it's an incentive with the airport that they're keeping it this high. I mean, this is just I hate to be a jerk, but that's just too much.
No, I agree. It definitely is. So that obviously doesn't look good.
Thank gosh it got better though. But man, this is wow. Look at this. Dang.
Yeah. There you go. 37%. So that's the issue. I don't know what they're doing. This may be a reason they haven't added Midway yet. I think Chicago Midway would be better. I think Baltimore
There's more connecting opportunities in Midway because Tulsa literally went from having no flights to Midway to 7,500 passengers on twice daily service. So I feel like twice daily service to new cities where you maximize, unless it's Austin, for instance, on connecting opportunities. So it's a pretty interesting concept, though, at the very least.
So I think if you're having 737s 3 times per day and you're getting about a third of the plane filled, it probably makes more sense to have it on a once daily, and then it'll be pretty nicely operated. Even, as bad as I hate to say it, because that's not as impressive.
We're just trying to make the airports as efficient as possible here, because I hate to be a jerk, like I said, but you can't have 7,000 seats open just like that. That's too much. That's too much infrastructure. There's I hate to reference this, but Orlando service, if you have literally 300 people a day, why are you going to leave these 6,000 seats? We're all wondering where the planes are and everything. This is where the planes are. And whether it might be an incentive, there might be something that's causing this to happen, but Southwest is not known for doing this. This is I'm not even joking. This is 1970 type average load factors. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
So I think if they want to focus on point to point as well as connection hubs, I think Midway would be a much better option, as you were saying. I think they'd have a lot better shot at Midway. So I could see probably a once daily Baltimore making more sense, along with maybe a twice daily Midway, depending on how that goes. Once daily Orlando, and then the Tampa numbers are somewhere on here, right?
Let's see.
This is still Tulsa, I think.
Oops. Yeah, I typed it wrong anyways. Tampa.
There we go.
Okay. That is the Q1 for 2021. Let me get you some better numbers. Those are a little skewed.
256.
That was even during non-peak time as well.
Oh my gosh.
Let's go with 344 from Q1 of 2022.
So that's 172 a day.
That sounds right. Yes, that is correct.
So, or not a day, but
a day. Yeah, each way a day. Yeah.
So that's pretty good. I think that Southwest could definitely take up that opportunity. Even with Breeze, I think Breeze and Southwest could go at it with the competition to kind of rub it in Frontier's face that they're doing so well, and Frontier decided to ultimately cut that service. So that'd be really interesting to see. I really don't have much else to say about Tampa. It's kind of the same deal as Orlando, just not as crazy. I think the slots are probably not as hard to get or not as expensive in Tampa.
I don't think so. I think they're a little bit easier.
Yeah, so that makes sense for Tampa. I definitely think Southwest should consider a daily service on a 737-700 in Tampa. To have a daily service to Tampa on a mainline jet is really good.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but I think Delta has some random oddball routes like Providence and stuff out of Tampa too. Am I right on that, or am I wrong?
You may be right. Yes,
I know Raleigh, because I think that would be. I think that would be cool for like Delta or somebody to take up, because that's plenty of passengers. They could fill it, I believe.
Right.
Because Delta has. Okay, I guess it was just Raleigh, but I thought there may have been an airline on here. Oh, Spirit. I didn't even think about Spirit. That would be really interesting.
Spirit would be good, but here's my thing with Spirit is they went to Rochester, which kudos to Rochester. It's a really nice airport. I really do like it. And I try to look at all of these airports around me.
You can make fun of Rochester if you need to in this instance.
I like to be as unbiased as possible, because the truth is they're all really nice airports. And they all serve these 4 different cities, and they all have really good services, really good infrastructure. Buffalo has amazing flight options. Rochester's terminal is gorgeous. Syracuse as well. Albany's got a really nice airport, a lot of services on Southwest compared to Syracuse. My thinking with Spirit is that I don't know why they went to Rochester, because they already serve Niagara Falls, just a little bit north of Buffalo. So with Rochester already being fairly close to Buffalo, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me why they didn't try Syracuse or Albany. But here's I think why they did is because Rochester desperately needed a daily service to Orlando on any airline, and I think Spirit saw this opportunity and took it up. So unfortunately, I think at this point, if Spirit's gonna add another New York state airport, I think they'd go to Albany, not just because Syracuse is closer to Rochester than Albany, but because Albany lost their Frontier service, and I think Spirit could fill in for them. So I'm going to be very interested to see where Spirit goes from here. Let's see. Do we want to talk about, let's see what other services we have in here. Washington, D.C., I'm not really too interested in. Atlanta on Delta, here's an interesting little bit of information. I think before COVID, they were going to upgrade this to an A321 from the A320 or whatever it was pre-COVID. Maybe it was the MD-90 actually. So getting back into those time frames, it's really sad. Let's see. What do we have here? What are some other big numbers?
Raleigh's 120.
Raleigh. So, okay. Breeze, Frontier operating this on a 4-weekly service for their, it's seasonal, but when it is seasonal, they're operating it on 4-weekly A320, sometimes the A321, which is very interesting, but the loads are okay. I mean, I think it would make more sense in a twice-weekly or even a once-weekly, which at that point, I don't really know if it's worth keeping. But I think Breeze, now being at Raleigh, would make much more sense on a twice-weekly service with their A220-300. I think that would make the most sense. I think the loads on that would be compared to Frontier's 4-weekly Airbus. So we'll have to see how that pans out in the future. There's so many routes out of Syracuse that Breeze really could do super well with. The main problem right now is just pilots. I think there's not really enough pilots to fill in all these gaps. Otherwise, the
maybe
the airlines
they weren't flying 3 daily to Baltimore.
Right. Yeah, that's another issue there. So Raleigh would make a lot of sense on Breeze. I think Frontier probably should drop it and focus on other things like bringing back Tampa, maybe Fort Myers. What else? I don't even know. I mean, Buffalo has like Atlanta and Dallas. So speaking of Dallas, here's another thing that we're going to go off on a little bit. So Dallas Fort Worth, let's see. It came about a couple years ago, operated on the 175, just like Denver was when United first announced it, which is very interesting. So I'm wondering if there's some kind of correlation between these two airlines serving Midwest cities, because they started on relatively the same kind of time frame. So Dallas on the 175 originally recently upgraded to an A319, I think a couple years ago. And it's been doing really well. I think every single service has been sold out. I mean, even sometimes when I look a couple days in advance, you can't even.
It was a 96% load factor outbound in
96.
July.
So that's pretty significant. So you have 96% load factor, and then you go to American's website, and I feel like every flight I check the night before it goes out, there you look at the seat map. Yeah, I guess we're gonna do it right here.
Yep, we're gonna do it. That's exactly right.
So
let's do it.
The only way to get to Dallas, I feel like every time I look, is by connecting in Charlotte or Philadelphia or Chicago or something. So I definitely think an upgrade to a 737-800 at some point would be really helpful, or an additional frequency. So I guess this one somehow isn't as full, of course, as soon as we look at it.
I would disagree.
I mean, there's still time for people to book, so.
This one's no, dude. This is still fantastic. This is right after Thanksgiving, considering that this is on Friday. So.
Oh, so people could still be away, not wanting to come back.
Yeah, exactly. Or, heck, we'll check the inbound. The inbound might be interesting. Let's see. Oh, it got upgraded to a 321. If that doesn't say something, I don't know what it does. So I mean,
we had a 321 upgrade a couple days ago.
Look at this upgrade! Oh my goodness, dude! Wow.
That's how you know you need a 738. If you're having 96% load factors on a route like this,
321. God.
And like almost every flight you check before the departure is sold out, I think that's definitely calling for an upgrade. So as you were saying,
319, dude, Sunday evening. That's ridiculous, dude.
Oh yes. So the 737 MAX 8 would make the most sense, I think, if they're concerned about efficiency. The 321 honestly could work potentially long term if they want to try.
Was obviously working on Saturday.
Right. So in peak travel times, maybe the 321. But I'm really a guy of consistency. So even if there's peak travel times, I really like when airlines operate just the same aircraft all year on the same frequency, but I understand when they don't. It makes sense. So whatever works best for the airlines. So I think what would be good is if maybe they try the 737-800 or the 737 MAX 8 if they're concerned about efficiency. If not, maybe the 738. I know Buffalo gets the 738 from Dallas, so I think maybe they have Airbus going on it now for the off season, just like Syracuse does. So a lot of other routes as well. So I think basically the most reasonable would be a 737-800 or MAX 8 for the short term, maybe long term as we experience more growth in A321. So there's my assessment on Dallas. I want to talk about Miami now. So Miami is kind of a joke. So not only, what are the numbers looking like for Miami, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. In Q1, it was 273. 273 divided by 2 is a nice number of 136.
So 136. That's probably enough for what, an A319?
Yes, 100%.
So a daily A319. All right. So let's kind of have a quick overview of what Miami is right now. So right now it's a seasonal, like fall through sometime in the spring, Saturday only once Embraer 175. That's really poor considering there's this many passengers that want to get to Miami per day. Again, not only is Miami a final destination for a lot of people, but you can also connect through Miami and go elsewhere. So this will fill up any of the remaining seats, I think, easily. So I don't know what the deal is here. I mean, if the Embraer 175 has been filling up that well, if American sees this, I don't see why they don't just operate it on an A319 or even a 737 that, you know, if it needs to go that far at some point in the future. So that's something that's really been kind of getting on my nerves along with the Dallas operations. Let's see. Do we have Phoenix, right? Was that another one?
Yes. Oops.
I know Buffalo has Phoenix. I believe they're the only.
Q2, it was 105. You might want to explain the Dallas principle with it too, or I can explain it as well.
What was the Dallas principle?
Where this number is 10. When the Dallas number was 102 total, yet it's selling out because of connections. This is a very similar situation.
Oh, yes. So Phoenix, so just like Dallas was, it was selling out because of the point-to-point demand, but also connection passengers. So you have this number plus connections filling up Dallas. And then Phoenix is a similar story. It's kind of a similar operation. Just Phoenix is a little bit further with, I believe, a little bit smaller metropolitan area. So that makes a little bit of sense for it to be slightly less than Dallas.
There is some more West Coast operations, though, that Syracuse does not have in general. Like, for instance, some of the Dallas services is overlapped with Delta for Atlanta, for instance, or United to Denver. But Phoenix has some opportunities like Spokane, or more opportunities like Reno, Sacramento, a city like Fresno, Palm Springs, or sorry, those two are Dallas services, but let me think of some better ones. Flagstaff, more opportunities to Bakersfield, Eugene, Oregon. Now, Dallas has all these, but Phoenix has them in much larger capacities. There's also a bunch of small California cities that aren't coming to my mind right now. More services to like Boise, Idaho, or Jackson Hole. And then also to Mexico, too. More services to Puerto Vallarta, Cabo, Guadalajara, Chihuahua, you name it.
Right. So Phoenix,
Hawaii as well. I completely forgot to mention Hawaii. Yes.
Oh, you're good. So as I was saying, I think Buffalo is the only airport in kind of central upstate Western New York that has Phoenix. I want to say it's Airbus currently for Buffalo. I don't know exactly what it is. I believe it may have been once daily at one point. It might still be. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it would make sense. If Syracuse is 105, Buffalo's probably 200 or something like that. So I don't see a problem with starting a service like this. Again, I think the main problem is finding pilots to fly these routes because they're all stuck on routes like Syracuse to Baltimore.
We're going to make fun of that for a long time.
It's true, man. I'm
not disagreeing. Southwest operates this service, what appears to be.
Is it not American?
I'm not seeing. I'm just seeing a Southwest Saturday only as of right now, if I'm seeing this correctly.
I thought I had seen American operate at one point, but I could be wrong.
Let me see if it's in their schedule. Go for it. Keep talking if you want.
Anyways, I'm also speaking for airports like Rochester and Albany as well because they're very comparable to Syracuse. So any of these airports, I think Phoenix would do really well with American.
This Saturday only for Southwest, looks like.
Huh. Okay. I guess I'm wrong with American, so I apologize. But Phoenix would definitely be very beneficial for Syracuse. Los Angeles is an interesting one. What is the what's our loads looking like for LAX? It's low 100s.
182 for Q2. Very good. So that's 91 per way.
Okay. All right, that's not bad. So this is probably a similar situation to what were we talking about with a 175? Oh, to San Francisco. It would make sense on an aircraft like the 175 or something like that. Just the only problem is the range. So I think the airlines are more waiting to do this for a few more years until maybe the capacity or the demand for this route.
The capacity is still fantastic, though, and I think a 319 for American connections would probably be even enough to justify it. But unfortunately, I think a more realistic option is going to be our Breeze Airways A220, which, if Breeze continues to build their model, I think on some routes they can most certainly do daily services because there's no reason not to. So, I mean, if they can keep building on their route network, I think them doing daily flights in the future would be really cool.
I agree.
Especially if they continue to build on breeze throughs, and at some point, once their network gets big enough connections, I feel like for Breeze could really, if they structure some routes correctly,
right? Like
they fly like LAX to Honolulu, you can go Syracuse with the breeze through, and like leave Syracuse at like 8 a.m. and get to Hawaii by like 8 p.m. or something. That would be very, very, very neat.
That'd be really good. So yeah, Breeze, I believe, is going to fill in a lot of gaps because the A220 is a really
versatile
you can use that aircraft.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, versatile. Yes, that's a very good way to put it. So you can use it for a lot of routes. All you really have to do if you're going to operate the A220 is just mess with the frequency and you should be all set. So I definitely think Breeze could do A220s. Like you were saying, I probably think they would start with a couple few times a week and then maybe move it to daily if the loads are really that good. Maybe that'll even encourage other, legacy carriers to start.
That's exactly right. I think the only reason that Southwest started Saturday only in Orlando is out of Tulsa is just because Breeze started it. That's exactly what they did out of Oklahoma City. They started New Orleans and Tampa seasonally to compete against Breeze.
Right. So I definitely think Breeze could do Los Angeles and San Francisco. San Bernardino just doesn't make sense for Syracuse. I mean, Jason Terreri says anywhere on the West Coast. I agree, but at the same time, if there's an option to get to Los Angeles versus San Bernardino is just not really going to cut it. So that's kind of my assessment with Breeze. I could definitely see cities like Palm Beach and Jacksonville on here. I think their loads are fair enough for Breeze to do a couple weekly, maybe once or twice a week. Key West 15, that's pretty.
West Palm Beach was 79 and 69 in Q1 and Q2, so those are
79 and 69. Okay, so yeah, I think they could do probably once or twice a week for
Jacksonville. In Q2 was 64. It might have been higher in Q1. Let me see if I can find it.
So I think these cities could do a couple times a week with Breeze. How about, is Vero Beach on there now that Breeze flies to Vero Beach? Vero Beach, if I pronounced that right.
I don't think so, unfortunately. I don't think it's quite 10, but if they promoted it really heavily, maybe they would be able to make it work.
I was thinking maybe they could do that in like peak times with a once weekly 190 or something like that.
That'd be neat.
Detroit, let's see, that's the 3 daily CRJ, I believe. 4 daily.
It was 41 in Q2. So that's predominantly.
But a lot of this is for connection, yeah.
Yes.
So that's why we have the frequency we currently do. So, Savannah, Georgia, that's another one that I was very interested in. Breeze could do that probably on a once weekly.
44 in Q2.
They could probably do a seasonal or something like that.
Summer seasonal, Savannah, I think would be really helpful, or even a winter. Heck,
right.
Let's see what the previous numbers were. Q1 was 30, so yeah, probably summer. Looks like summer is more popular for Savannah.
Do we want to talk about Tulsa and Syracuse and Minneapolis?
Oh gosh, yes. Okay, so here's the situation with Minneapolis for both cities. Both cities had service to Minneapolis pre-pandemic. Tulsa had service on the Embraer ERJ-175 twice a day. And Syracuse had it once a day on the A319, which was pretty impressive. And it did super well, especially for Syracuse, which was really nice for connecting opportunities, leisure, point-to-point, and all those various reasons. So when the pandemic happened, Delta suspended many, and I mean several routes. And for whatever reason, these two routes are in the last batch pretty much of routes that have yet to return to the Delta network. It blows my mind that these routes have not returned yet due to the demand that we're seeing. I'm not sure if they would be on here. Let's see. Minneapolis is 36, but again, this is Q1 and it's predominantly, what's it called, traffic? Point to point. See if it was back on here. In Q3 2020, it was 36, so pretty impressive. And then for the Tulsa reference here, I don't know why it's not on page 1. They must not have got data because I didn't see it either. Well, it looks like they made fun of Minneapolis pretty good because it's not even on here, but I have to think that there's a little bit more than 10 passengers on it. So it's just kind of skewed right now, but the connecting opportunities in Minneapolis are fantastic. And I think Delta's compensated in both cities with additional frequencies to Atlanta and Salt Lake City for Tulsa and New York and Detroit for Syracuse. I think that they still need to add the route, though. I think it would be very beneficial. Boston service also started for Delta out of Syracuse, which is a really, really neat route, in my opinion. Very exciting. So I'll be excited to see how that progresses into the future. But the connecting opportunities in Mini are still there, and there's still plenty of demand for it, as that graph showed. I'm really excited to see what the Q2 numbers and Q3 numbers will look like for 2022 out of Syracuse. And the fact that they don't have it back is pretty impressive, to be quite honest. So if they don't bring it back at some point, Sun Country just made a new route announcement with various routes out of Minneapolis. And I feel like the next round of routes might have Syracuse. So we shall see.
Or even Tulsa. I think that definitely can do with Tulsa. So here's another interesting topic is Sun Country announced a few months back at this point, they announced Buffalo. So I think Delta still had Minneapolis suspended, and then Sun Country announced it, and then Delta brought back Buffalo to Minneapolis, or Delta resumed it first, and then Sun Country kind of followed for the competition. So I think if Sun Country comes to Syracuse with a couple weekly services to Minneapolis, I could see Delta starting that again. I think the best chance of getting Sun Country in here is if Delta doesn't resume it, and then Sun Country tries to fill it in, because if Delta does it, Sun Country may try to focus on other cities that don't have that flight yet to fill up the loads are a little bit better. So we'll have to see, though. I don't really know yet. I know we looked at the loads last night for Syracuse to Minneapolis when it operated. What was it, about 90-something percent?
96 or something ridiculous here. Let's see.
96. And that was on the A319. So even though that one, the other website was showing 36-something passengers a day, having 96% on the A319 is definitely more than the 36 passengers.
All because of connecting opportunities predominantly.
Yeah, because of connections. So if it's going to do that well, I don't see why.
In September of 2019, and let me see if I can pull up some other numbers here.
Yeah. So if it's going to be that good,
92 in August, and then July. July was 91, and then let's see what happened during the non-peak season. November was. It was on SkyWest actually, and it was 86. That's pretty darn good. It's very impressive. I'm really impressed.
So maybe,
and then I guess they went away in December of 2019. I wonder why. Makes no sense. It wasn't seasonal, was it?
It may. I think the main line may have been seasonal, and then it may have been regional.
Nothing came out for January of 2020, so I'm not exactly sure on that, but that's pretty interesting to say the least.
Okay. So whatever the case may have been, there's still demand for Minneapolis, and I'm sure now that the airport's been growing for the last couple of years, I definitely think Tulsa, Syracuse, many other airports as well. I know Albany and Rochester are still missing their MSP service. So
I think Minneapolis was seasonal during the summer, from what I'm seeing.
Oh, okay.
Pretty impressive.
Gotcha. Okay. I know last year, or maybe it was this year, Delta was planning to bring it back. Minneapolis to Syracuse on a CRJ 900. For some reason they didn't, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is.
Cuss out if you need to, man. Do what you need to do.
I think that's most of the things I can think of. So unless there's other things that we may have talked about previously that I'm forgetting, but if there's anything you'd like to add, Tulsa, Syracuse, either way.
Yeah, I mean, Syracuse has been seeing tremendous flights as of late. I've been really glad to see the progression on all the routes. I mean, if we kind of just go through here to take a look at the network in general, you can see that Allegiant has a really nice presence. I think the Fort Lauderdale and Nashville services particularly, and also Myrtle Beach, are very impressive. Yeah, the American Mainline service, Charlotte and Dallas, and then Washington National seasonally, which I think is a really cool service, and I'm excited to see how they build in those connecting opportunities. American Eagle has Boston, Chicago, Philly, Reagan, and then that Miami's just that makes me so mad, for lack of a better term. You have Charleston, Las Vegas, and Tampa for Breeze. I would be very surprised if they don't increase by like 6 to 12 cities within the next 2 years. So expect Breeze at Syracuse for sure. The Delta services I think are great, but Minneapolis could be added to the network along with that. I thought Boston started. Did Boston not start?
Boston started for Rochester and Buffalo.
Oh, it was both the other ones. Dang.
Wow. We had Boston on Delta, and then American picked it up. Another thing I want to briefly mention is the LaGuardia service. One of those frequencies has been added on at A319, which is very interesting. I think they're doing that because of they don't want to pay as much having those aircraft sit on the ground at LaGuardia. So this is what they're doing at Buffalo and Minneapolis as well. Or Buffalo. With their services to Minneapolis and Boston are 321s. So I think that's mostly because they don't want to have those aircraft sit on the ground in bigger cities, but at the same time, they are filling up those services. So that'd be really interesting to see something like that happen at Syracuse. Again, I think the reason Boston isn't as prominent out of Syracuse, even if the cities are different sizes, Buffalo is twice as big for the metropolitan area. Plus, Buffalo gets a lot of traffic from over the Canada border. So that's part of it. But I think another reason is Buffalo being almost twice as far from Boston to Syracuse. People are more willing to drive from Syracuse to Boston as opposed to Buffalo to Boston. And again, that's not all of it. A lot of it depends on the sizes of the city and that kind of thing. So a once daily Embraer 145 for Buffalo, or for Syracuse to Boston, sorry. I just don't think that's too sufficient. I don't know what they could do to change that. I know Rochester is only 2 hours further from Boston, but they have three daily Embraer 145s. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen, how this is going to evolve in the future. But I guess for now, it's just not really one of those staple routes that, stuff like you have Detroit and Philadelphia and that kind of thing, which is whatever. But New York LaGuardia, nonetheless, to have it on an A319 for some frequencies, that's pretty good.
Very impressive in general. But yeah, I'm just very impressed with the route network in general, like we were talking about. Frontier cutting those routes, really sad. Not very impressed with that. They got to bring those back and some additional routes. The RDU service is really interesting, but I'm glad that it's very successful. JetBlue, I also feel like can expand back to that Fort Lauderdale market. Fort Myers would be really interesting. That's just a thought. That would be really interesting. I think Tampa as well. I know they fly
Palm
some
Beach,
north.
Tampa, or Los Angeles. I could see JetBlue doing Los Angeles.
I don't know if you've seen the Westchester, New York route network for JetBlue, but I feel like they could pretty much turn that into Syracuse. Yeah. 220 to LAX, 100%. It would be
that would be really good.
That would be your aircraft to do it daily because you don't have to do an American A319. JetBlue has an extensive network in Los Angeles, so JetBlue.
That's very efficient.
And are they doing that to Buffalo? Maybe.
What? Los Angeles?
220. Yeah. I thought
no, they have a 320 doing Los Angeles to Buffalo.
Interesting. Dang. Yeah. That is really nice. The United service is also very impressive here out of Syracuse. That Denver service is really nice to get to see right there. Chicago's a consistent service for American and United too. So really nice. I think Southwest could definitely add that as well. Along with that Southwest operation in general, I think it just improved tremendously for Syracuse. So I hope they definitely build on that in the future and it'll be exciting. The cargo has also been fantastic. I'm really excited to see where FedEx and UPS can take that 757 operation. Like we were talking about earlier, I think Primera would be a huge addition to the network. So hopefully we'll get to see that. There's also the route map for Syracuse. This really shows how low of a city count that we have for the West Coast. I think Houston for United would also be very interesting, even if it's just a 175 or something. I feel like that would be very nice to get to see. Yeah. Minneapolis coming back, like we talked about.
Was that on your list of unserved markets, Houston?
Houston, yes, probably. Let's see here.
I think 175 would be the best, probably, like you were saying. It is also a hub, though.
I'm really surprised that it's not coming up, but it should be on here. So I'm not sure why it's refusing to come up, but it should
I think I just saw it down there.
On this page or page 2?
That page. HOUSTON.
That's what I have in the search.
There it is.
There we go. 69 in Q3 of 2021. I guess I spelled it wrong. How about that?
That's okay. It happens.
Come on. I don't know why it's not working, but it's refusing to move. Oh, it came off on that page. So it must be on this page. Did I spell it wrong again? Where did it go? Bruh.
It's not working. It's stubborn.
No kidding. Okay, I don't know why we don't have 2022 numbers, but 69 in Q3 2021, the peak time. So 175. I'd really like to get to see that. That would be really cool.
I think that'd be good, yeah.
Go ahead.
Aside from that, that's really all I can think of.
Destin on Allegiant?
I could see that. Destin on Allegiant. Other Allegiant markets. I'm surprised no one else has started Las Vegas to compete with Breeze. I could have seen Frontier doing it, but you guys kind of know how Frontier is with their little bit of stubbornness, especially out of these poor New York cities, Buffalo, Rochester, to name a few. Phoenix Mesa, I think, is one that I could definitely see coming if American or Breeze doesn't do the greater Phoenix area. I think Allegiant could pick up Phoenix Mesa. What was it? Wasn't Tulsa one of the highest served Phoenix Mesa routes?
Sioux Falls.
Oh, Sioux Falls, yes. Yeah. Okay. So Phoenix Mesa has been growing kind of like, it reminds me of like Punta Gorda. It's kind of the same situation, just located, different part of the United States. So Punta Gorda is another one to bring up. The loads on that, even kind of in the summer seasons, has been like 96% for one of those months, and then above 75 to 80% for most of the other months. So I could see them doing Phoenix Mesa, even if it's once or twice a week, would be really nice. If you want to bust in here and mention something, that's perfectly fine. We don't have to talk about Syracuse the whole time.
No, you're good. I'm thinking here. Let's see. Destin. I wonder what New Orleans would be. That would be interesting. Definitely a thought.
That would be good. I think probably
St. Louis Southwest connections too. Either St. Louis or Midway, I think has to happen. That would be really nice to get to see from Southwest.
That'd be good, yeah. I'd probably think Midway would do better, but St. Louis as well would do really
no, I completely. They have a mutual network, so you could definitely go anywhere pretty much, which would be very, very helpful. Midway's performed really well for Rochester, so I have to think that Syracuse following those footsteps is fantastic. The Nashville service is really nice. Like I said, Destin I think would be really cool. Miami consistency's got to happen. Maybe even more Orlando service, like we were talking about, and Tampa service as well. Florida is just. It's such a popular network out of Syracuse, so they got to serve it. You have to serve it. Outside of that, Phoenix, Los Angeles, San Francisco, as we talked about, Seattle long-term, maybe San Diego long-term, maybe as well. That is the assessment. Maybe a couple point-to-points like a Savannah or Jacksonville or West Palm Beach as well would be really cool. Houston, but yeah, that is the thorough assessment. And then some international routes long term: Dublin, Cancun, Cabo, Puerto Vallarta, you name it. Even Mexico City or something would be cool. So that's awesome. You love to get to see that right there.